the dawn of the 20th century. A world accelerating, shrinking, becoming interconnected in ways previously unimaginable. And at the helm of the British Empire, King Edward VII, a monarch with an appetite for the modern, a keen understanding of influence, and a sprawling network of royal relatives across the courts of Europe. Communication in this gilded yet increasingly tense age was still largely the domain of the coded telegram, the diplomatic pouch, the handwritten letter carried across borders. Slow, deliberate, filtered. But a new invention was beginning to hum across the wires, promising a revolution: the telephone. In 1907, a significant yet subtly transformative event occurred. King Edward VII, already a royal pioneer in his adoption of the motor car, embraced this newer technology with characteristic enthusiasm. He became the first British monarch to make regular use of the telephone for international calls. This wasn't a one-off novelty, a ceremonial demonstration. This was the king, from Buckingham Palace or Sandringham, picking up the receiver and speaking directly, his voice carried by copper wires beneath the English Channel, across nations, to his kin who reigned or held sway in the grand capitals of Europe. Imagine the scene. The specially installed telephone apparatus, perhaps in a private study. The complex series of connections managed by operators, navigating the nascent international exchanges. And then the crackle of the line, the faint static, and suddenly, a voice: the Kaiser in Berlin, the Tsar in St. Petersburg, a cousin in Copenhagen or Athens. The immediacy is what's breathtaking. Bypassing the slow dance of official diplomatic channels, the carefully crafted ambiguity of written correspondence. This was direct, personal, unfiltered. Think about the implications. Edward, often dubbed the uncle of Europe, had intricate family ties that were inextricably linked with the political chessboard of the continent. His nephew was Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany. His wife Alexandra's sister was the Dowager Empress of Russia, mother to Tsar Nicholas II. His own children and other relatives were woven into the fabric of numerous European royal houses. These weren't just polite family chats. They were conversations freighted with the weight of empires. What was discussed in these pioneering calls? Family news, certainly. But inevitably, given the personalities and the precarious state of European affairs, matters of state, of policy, of political nuance must have crept in. A word of caution from Edward to Wilhelm about the escalating naval race. A direct appeal for understanding during a Balkan crisis. A personal assurance conveyed far quicker than any ambassador could manage. The suspense here isn't one of overt danger, but of profound consequence. The telephone, in its infancy for such long-distance communication, was not the crystal-clear, secure line of today. What of misheard words? Of nuances lost in translation or a poor connection? A misunderstood inflection could, in this high-stakes game, have unintended repercussions. And what of privacy? While sophisticated wiretapping was a thing of the future, the very notion of the king's voice traveling vulnerable across international lines was a new frontier of royal communication. This regular use of the international telephone by Edward II was a subtle assertion of his personal diplomacy. It allowed him to maintain and cultivate his network in a way that was both more intimate and more immediate. It gave him a direct line, quite literally, to the key players in Europe, many of whom were bound to him by blood. It was a tool that suited his personality: affable, persuasive, a natural networker. Consider the contrast with traditional diplomacy. Ambassadors would present formal notes. Ministers would conduct lengthy negotiations. The telephone offered a shortcut, a way for monarchs to connect almost as ordinary individuals, albeit individuals whose words could shape the fate of millions. It was a modern monarch leveraging modern technology to practice a very old art, the art of personal influence. The year 1907 sits in a crucial period. Tensions between Great Britain and Germany were palpable. The intricate web of alliances that would eventually lead to the Great War was being spun. In this context, Edward's telephone calls become even more significant. Were they attempts to diffuse crises, to maintain a fragile peace through personal connection? Or did the informality sometimes exacerbate misunderstandings? The historical record is not always explicit on the precise content of every call, adding to the intrigue. This wasn't a loudly trumpeted policy shift. It was a practical adoption of new means. Yet, it subtly changed the landscape of royal and diplomatic communication. It made the uncle of Europe more accessible to his extended family, and by extension, it brought the crowned heads of Europe into closer, more immediate, and perhaps more volatile contact. The image of King Edward II, a monarch steeped in tradition, reaching for this modern marvel to speak across nations, is a potent one. It underscores his forward-thinking nature, his willingness to embrace change when it served his purpose. It was a quiet revolution in communication, a testament to his belief in the power of direct dialogue, even as the world around him was increasingly speaking the language of arms and ultimatums. The echoes of those crackling international calls, placed by a king trying to navigate a complex world, still resonate with the poignant knowledge of what was to come.